December 1941, Japan's top minds believed the U.S. Navy could not field more than 300,000 men before 1944. The real number would reach 2.3 million. Based on flawless intelligence, Tokyo built its war plan on a calculation 8 times too small. This silent error doomed Japan's strategy before the first shot. How did this single number slip past every safeguard? Commander Minoru Genda stood on the flight deck of Akagi as the sun rose over the Pacific, watching the first attack wave roar toward Pearl Harbor. Every detail of the operation rested on a single number, one that shaped the entire war plan. Japanese naval planners, confident in their calculations, recorded in their memos that the U.S. Navy would not exceed 300,000 personnel by the end of 1943. This figure, drawn from pre-war American strength and reinforced by the belief that the United States could not mobilize quickly, became the cornerstone of Japan's strategy. Genda and his colleagues accepted the number without hesitation. It was not a guess, but a foundation. It was used to estimate how many ships the U.S. could crew, how fast it could recover, and what kind of resistance Japan would face after striking. But the number was wrong by a staggering margin. By the end of 1943, official U.S. Navy records show 2.3 million men in uniform, 8 times what Japanese planners believed possible. The entire southern operation, from the attack on Pearl Harbor to the push for oil in the Dutch East Indies, depended on the idea that America would be slow, limited, and predictable. Instead, the reality was a tidal wave of manpower that no Japanese calculation had ever allowed for. As Akagi's planes disappeared into the clouds, the war's outcome had already been set, not by the courage of the pilots, but by a number quietly written in a Tokyo office months before. Ensign Takeo Yoshikawa arrived in Honolulu in March 1941 under the name Tadashi Morimura, officially assigned as a junior diplomat. His real mission was far from routine. Each morning, Yoshikawa blended in among tourists, riding harbor launches that circled the battleships and cruisers moored at Pearl Harbor. He memorized ship locations, counted visible aircraft, and noted the comings and goings of destroyers and supply ships. Sometimes he booked sightseeing flights over Oahu, sketching the fleet's arrangement from the air. Every detail, when ships left port, which docks bustled with activity, even the rhythm of patrol boats, went into his coded cables back to Tokyo. Yoshikawa's reports were models of precision. He mapped battleship row down to the mooring buoys, tracked maintenance schedules, and flagged any unusual movement. His data matched U.S. Navy records almost exactly, a fact confirmed by post-war interrogations. The consulate's cipher clerks encoded his findings and sent them by commercial cable, where they traveled up the chain to the Foreign Ministry, then to the Navy General Staff, then straight to the planners of the Pearl Harbor attack. Requests for clarification from Tokyo were rare and focused on small ambiguities, not on the numbers themselves. Yoshikawa never speculated. He reported only what he saw, and his accuracy left little room for doubt. The flaw in Japan's war plan would not be found in the intelligence collected from Honolulu. Inside the Imperial Japanese Navy, intelligence was a career dead end. Officers assigned to analysis wore the same uniforms as their peers, but their opinions rarely shaped the course of strategy. The real power resided with operations staff, men who had proven themselves at sea, not behind a desk. Reports from the field, no matter how precise, were filtered through a culture that valued intuition and warrior spirit over numbers. In this environment, even the most accurate data from Honolulu became suspect if it clashed with established beliefs. Americans were seen as soft, lacking the discipline to match Japanese efficiency. Planners assumed that United States ships would be crewed as tightly as their own, lean and minimal, every man essential. The idea that the United States could fill its decks with thousands more sailors seemed almost absurd to the staff in Tokyo. This mindset shaped every step of the Southern operation, Japan's blueprint for war. The plan called for a lightning strike at Pearl Harbor, a rapid seizure of oil fields in the Dutch East Indies, and the creation of a defensive perimeter stretching across the Pacific. Each phase depended on the belief that the United States would take years to rebuild its navy, that American industry and manpower would move slowly. The baseline number, accepted without debate, guided calculations on shipbuilding, supply chains, and the expected timeline for negotiation. In the hierarchy charts of the Navy General Staff, intelligence officers sat at the margins, their warnings softened or ignored. The Southern operation moved forward, not on the strength of evidence, but on the confidence of men convinced that spirit would outweigh statistics. May 1942, Coral Sea. Japanese naval staff prepared for a clash they believed would pit two American carriers and no more than 4,000 sailors against their own fleet. This estimate came straight from Tokyo's accepted calculations, and American task forces were thought to mirror Japanese standards with lean crews and minimal support. As the battle unfolded, Japanese radio intelligence teams intercepted a flood of American signals. The volume and complexity of the traffic did not fit the expected numbers. Intercept logs referenced supply requests, medical teams, and operational details on a scale that seemed out of proportion. Analysts in Tokyo tallied the intercepts and compared them to their models. The numbers pointed to more than 8,000 American personnel in the task force, twice what planners had forecast. Instead of reconsidering their assumptions, staff officers in Tokyo reached for familiar explanations. Reports described the Americans as wasteful, their ships crowded with unnecessary men, their procedures slow and inefficient. The official analysis blamed American excess rather than American capacity. No one in the chain of command suggested that the baseline estimate might be wrong. Instead, the numbers were rationalized away and absorbed into the narrative that spiritual strength would overcome material advantage. The first clear warning went unheeded, as the machinery of denial kept Japan's war plan moving forward. The Battle of Midway delivered a shock that Tokyo's planners could not ignore. When the carrier USS Yorktown took multiple bomb and torpedo hits, Japanese observers counted her out, certain she would sink, just as their models predicted. But below decks, hundreds of American sailors went to work. Damage control teams, each with specialized training, fought fires, patched holes, and restored power in a matter of hours. The effort kept Yorktown afloat long enough to return for another fight, a feat that seemed impossible to Japanese officers accustomed to lean crews and minimal redundancy. Weeks after the battle, Japanese intelligence obtained the Yorktown's crew list. The number was staggering. About 2,200 men, nearly 50% more than the standard complement on a Japanese carrier. The document included not just pilots and gunners, but teams of machinists, electricians, medics, and radio operators, roles that in the Imperial Navy were often doubled up or left unfilled. This surplus of manpower allowed the Americans to launch larger air groups, recover from damage at sea, and keep their ships fighting under conditions that would have left a Japanese vessel dead in the water. The evidence was undeniable. The Yorktown's survival was not luck. It was the direct result of a crew size and training regimen that Tokyo had never considered possible. Yet even as the numbers circulated in intelligence summaries, the official explanation remained the same. American ships were simply overstaffed and their procedures wasteful. The data was noted, but the assumption behind Japan's war plan stayed firmly in place, setting the stage for even greater surprises to come. August 1942, Guadalcanal. Japanese staff predicted a minor American landing, perhaps a few thousand men at most. Instead, 16,000 United States Marines stormed ashore on the first day, backed by a naval force of over 30,000 sailors. Japanese submarines shadowed the endless stream of American convoys, sending coded reports back to Tokyo. Each sighting brought another shock: new ships, fresh supplies, and men arriving faster than Japanese planners thought possible. Admiral Yamamoto, who had studied in the United States, broke protocol to send a panic-coded message. The United States was fielding numbers far beyond all pre-war calculations. The Navy Ministry ordered an emergency analysis. After weeks of combing through intercepted signals, submarine logs, and battle reports, the findings were impossible to ignore. United States Navy manpower had already reached 1.8 million, with projections soaring to 2.4 million within a year. Japan's ceiling stood at 400,000. The classified report was stamped with the highest level of secrecy. Only a handful of admirals saw the numbers. The rest of the fleet continued fighting, unaware that the war was now mathematically unwinnable. June 1944, Philippine Sea. Japan launched 9 carriers and 450 planes. The Americans responded with 15 carriers, 100 escort ships, and 70,000 sailors in a single task force. By nightfall, Japan lost 3 carriers and nearly 90% of its trained pilots. The outcome was not determined in the chaos of battle, but in a quiet office years earlier, when the truth was buried and hope replaced arithmetic. In war and strategy, a single unchecked assumption can outweigh any weapon. Today, the cost of analytical blind spots shapes decisions in every field, from security to science. Numbers still lie at the heart of power, and misreading them remains history's most dangerous error. What do you think?